I've never told this story to anyone other than my closest friends, but this felt like a good outlet to finally get this out my chest publicly. There's something called the 6 degrees of separation theory, which basically states that everyone in the world is separated by at most 6 steps. Well, I'm separated from Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails mastermind, by just 1 step, and it was due to a stalker. Back in 2009, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had just joined a pretty particular punk band, which mixed a very loud sound with cabaret-like visuals. We never made it big, but our act was appealing enough that it got the attention of many people. One of them was a strange girl, who was always chain-smoking, had a weird aura to herself, and who was always wearing a jacket on her shoulders, meaning her arms were not in the sleeves, and who eventually said she wanted to be our manager. She said that she was friends with Slash from Guns N' Roses, that she had managed a couple of bands when she used to live in New Orleans and whatnot, so we decided to hear her out. Her band was sort of a crazy one, so drugs passed freely at her parties. This girl, who told us her name was Christy or something, would provide us with party favors sometimes, would tell us that she was worth $2 million, that she had 5 cars, that she worked in this luxury building and had a huge house somewhere in the suburbs. The thing is, she was always picking cigarette butts off the street and smoking the filters, like she was some homeless person. Something about her just didn't click particularly with me. She always came to see us in sort of a fancy SUV, so we went along with her stories for the most part though. Eventually, Christy fell hard for me, told me she was divorcing her husband and that she wanted to be with me. I was intrigued by her, and so I started testing all her stories. I asked to visit her at her office, and she'd always make excuses of why I couldn't, until eventually she told me her office had closed down and they were looking for new space. I asked her why she was using the same car if she had like 5, and again, more and more excuses. I asked her to visit her huge house, and the same thing happened. She would come up with some excuses on why I couldn't come over, mostly that her husband was still there and whatnot. I started to get sick of all her excuses and eventually confronted her that I thought she was a liar. She got desperate, started to make more excuses, and I just told her to get lost. She had a previous fight with some of my bandmates before, so she had already been discarded as our manager. She started calling me every day asking to see me. I would constantly tell her no, until one day she showed up at my house around 5 in the morning, apparently wasted. She said she had picked up this guy friend of hers to go to a party, but he was too drunk, and that he was now passed out in her car, and she didn't know what to do with him. I looked across the street and saw no one in her car, and she said it was because the guy was laying down. I really didn't feel like bothering and going to her car to check it out. She eventually started crying, and I felt bad enough for her that I let her come into my living room. It was at this point that she took off her jacket, and for the first time ever, I realized she was missing her entire left arm. I was already giddy by her showing up at my house drunk and all, that I didn't dare asking how it happened. I know this has nothing to do with the story, but it was something that just added to the already weirded out atmosphere. I hung out with her for a while. At this point, I started doubting that she was actually drunk. I gave her coffee. I told her to please never show up to my house like that again, and eventually told her just to drop the guy off at a Waffle House and then just go home. It might not have been the most reasonable thing to tell someone in that state to drive, but I just wanted the whole thing to be over, and like I said, I felt like she was acting to be drunk the whole time, and she seemed okay enough to drive. She eventually left, and that was that for the night. The next day, again, she started stalking me by phone, to the point where I just stopped picking up. I worked early hours, and she would call me at 2 or 3 a.m., completely drunk. I eventually got sick of all of it, and told her to stay away from me and to never call me again. She complied, and for about a week, it seemed like the whole thing was history. Around 6 days later, she calls me again when I was at work. I started telling her that she wasn't supposed to call me, but she said that she could finally invite me over to the house, and she wanted me to come and visit her. All sorts of red flags went up for me, so of course I told her to forget about it and just hung up on her. She again started calling me at late hours, to the point that I just had to turn off my phone at night, otherwise I would never get a good night's sleep. I remember it was a Friday. After waking up, I had a voicemail on my phone. It was left around 2 in the morning. I checked it out. It was her saying, "Hi Max, I just took 200 pills and I've been drinking all night. I just wanted to say goodbye and that I love you. Good luck with the rest of your life." Needless to say, I got totally weirded out. I was so sick of her lies, I just deleted the message, completely assuming it was one of her attempts to get me to call her. I decided to forget about it and went to work. Next Tuesday after that, I get another voicemail from her phone, but this time it's a guy's voice. "Hi Max, this is Christy's husband. I'm calling her friends in her contacts list to let them know that she passed away last Friday, and we're doing a memorial for her in downtown Atlanta tomorrow. If you want to go, please call me back. I can give you the address." I can't even explain how I felt at that point. I was shocked, and I tried to evade the news by thinking this was some guy that Christy had manipulated into calling me, just to get me somewhere at some time. But, of course, the whole situation didn't make much sense to me. The guy eventually called another one of my bandmates, whose name was on Christy's contact list as well. I had told my band about this entire situation. My bandmate, who'd been suspicious of this girl for a while, started prying this guy for more info. We eventually learned that she used a fake name with us the whole time, that her real name was Amber, and that she was using a made-up name because she had been in trouble with the law. We googled her, and sure enough, turns out she stalked Trent Reznor in the past and managed to steal his credit card info. She was even arrested for it. I was stunned at this point, unsure of what to do next. We never went to the memorial. We were way too suspicious to do that. To this day, I still don't know if the girl committed suicide for real, or if the whole thing was some kind of shame to get me in trouble. But since I never heard from her again, I doubt it. Or maybe she's been using a fake name ever since and decided to move on with her life. I'll never know, but it's definitely one of the worst ways to get 1 degree of separation with someone famous. I got rid of my cell phone after that, and it took me 3 years until I felt okay enough to get a new one. I really never want to go through something like that ever again.